Subscribe to Brave Animals for real-life stories where animals become unexpected heroes. From dusty barns to bustling city streets, we bring you tales that will make your heart race, your eyes tear up, and your faith in animals grow stronger. Don't miss the next life-changing bark or whisper. It started like any other Saturday afternoon at the Pine Hill Supercenter in rural Arizona. Aisles were packed with shopping carts. Families were arguing over cereal brands. Kids were sneaking candy into baskets, and overhead speakers played 80s soft rock no one was really listening to. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, and the smell of rotisserie chicken mixed with lemony floor cleaner filled the air. And then the front doors slammed open with a metallic clap. A dog burst through. Not just any dog. It was filthy, its fur matted with dust and its eyes wild with something between terror and fierce determination. It wasn't small either. A full-sized German shepherd with the powerful build of a trained working animal, but its appearance said it hadn't been properly fed or cleaned in months. The creature wasn't attacking. It wasn't barking. It didn't even growl. It sprinted straight down the center aisle, dragging something behind it in its teeth. Shoppers screamed. Children ducked. A glass jar of pasta sauce shattered as a woman's purse swung into a display. Someone yelled, "Call security," as the K9 weaved around carts and customers with a single focus, dragging a pink, muddy, half-torn backpack. Security guards near the entrance hesitated, hands hovering near their radios. The older one muttered, "That's no stray," as the dog reached the intersection between frozen foods and housewares. It slowed, gently dropped the backpack and stood over it. Panting hard, it stared at the crowd forming around it. And then someone gasped. Sticking out of the partially unzipped backpack was a child's sneaker, crusted in dry red stains. Beside it, a broken toy pony with one eye missing, its synthetic, hair tangled like it had been buried. A mother clutched her daughter closer. Someone whispered, "Is that blood?" A heavy silence fell over the store. The buzz of the fluorescent lights suddenly felt louder. An air conditioner clicked off. The dog looked at them all, then growled low as one of the guards tried to step forward. Its ears flattened, teeth bared, one paw on the bag. It was protecting it, and then it did the unthinkable. It turned its back on the crowd and ran toward the exit, stopping halfway to look back, as if asking someone to follow. "Whoa, there." The voice came from the end of aisle 7. Stepping out from behind a freestanding rack of paper towels was a man in his late 50s. His jeans were worn, his flannel shirt faded, and his wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow across a deeply lined face. He didn't look panicked like the others. He looked like he recognized something. The man knelt slowly, eyes locked on the dog. "Lightning," he said softly. "Is that you?" The dog froze. The man took off his cowboy hat, ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair and stood up. "I'll be damned," he murmured. 4 years. People turned toward him. Someone asked, "You know that dog?" The man nodded slowly. "That's not a stray. That's a military K9. Mine. We served together." He looked around at the stunned faces. "I thought he died in a flash flood during a cartel raid south of El Paso. We never found his body. Only his vest." The security guard raised an eyebrow. "If he's trained, can you control him?" The man sighed. "Let me try." He cupped his hands and called out loud and clear, "Sit, Lightning." The dog hesitated and then dropped to its haunches. Someone gasped. The man approached slowly and knelt by the torn backpack. "This yours, boy?" Lightning gave a low whine, then nudged the bag with his snout. The cowboy touched the sneaker sticking out. His face changed. That's a girl-size one. Same brand my niece wore. She went missing outside Tucson. Never found." The crowd backed up as more people noticed what was inside. A partial name label. El Na, written in fading Sharpie. The cowboy stood up, firm. "We need to call the sheriff. Now." 20 minutes later, 3 squad cars pulled into the lot, their lights casting a spinning red glow across the desert dusk. Detectives examined the backpack. One knelt by Lightning, still sitting obediently beside the bag, and said, "Where did you find this?" Lightning didn't answer, but his eyes were locked on the exit. His body trembled like he wanted to move. The cowboy stepped up beside the detective. "He wants us to follow," he said. "He remembers the job." A deputy laughed nervously. "You serious, following a dog?" "He's not just a dog," the cowboy said. "He's the one that found that underground shack full of trafficked kids back in 19. He sniffs guilt." The sheriff, an older woman with a badge worn nearly smooth, nodded. "Let's go. We've chased worse leads." They loaded the backpack into an evidence bag and let Lightning off leash. He bolted into the dusk, and they followed. The Arizona. Dusk was turning purple by the time Lightning led the convoy out of the Pine Hill Supercenter parking lot. 3 police vehicles followed closely behind the dusty pickup driven by the cowboy, whose name the sheriff finally learned was Wade Harlan. He hadn't wanted to say much to the press, who had already begun sniffing around the scene. But he did. "Tell the sheriff one thing. If that dog's leading us somewhere, ma'am, you best bring backup." The roads grew narrower as they left town. First the pavement cracked, then disappeared into gravel. Wade's truck kicked up clouds of dust as he followed Lightning, who moved like he'd rehearsed this route in his sleep. Every turn he made seemed intentional. He didn't pause. He didn't second guess. He moved like a memory had gripped his legs and wouldn't let go. Inside the squad car, Deputy Harper kept watching the canine through the windshield. "He's not just running," she murmured. "He's guiding." The sheriff glanced sideways. "You ever seen anything like this?" "No, ma'am," Harper said. "Not from a dog that's supposedly been missing 4 years." Lightning led them off-road, onto a dirt path partially overgrown with brush. Wade's truck had no trouble with the terrain, but the squad car scraped and groaned. One officer grumbled, "We following a K9 or chasing Bigfoot?" They weren't laughing 5 minutes later. Lightning stopped suddenly beside an abandoned-looking trailer. The place sat on cinder blocks, its windows blacked out with cardboard and duct tape. The siding was rusted. No signs of movement. The dog stood perfectly still. His ears twitched. Then he let out a low growl, the kind that rattled deep in the chest. Wade stepped out of his truck, shotgun in hand. The sheriff motioned for quiet. Then she whispered, "Secure the perimeter. Harper, stay with Wade and the dog." The officers fanned out as the sun dipped below the hills. Coyotes howled in the distance, but Lightning didn't flinch. He walked up to the front door, sniffed it, then turned to the left side of the trailer and began pawing at the dirt. Wade followed him, heart pounding. Lightning scratched until his nails hit something hollow. Wade bent down and pulled away the top layer of dust. It was a hatch, bolted shut. The sheriff stepped over. "Get me the crowbar." Within minutes, the hatch creaked open. A gust of stale, foul air burst out like something long forgotten had finally exhaled. Flashlights illuminated a narrow wooden staircase leading downward. Harper clicked her radio. "We've got a basement under a trailer in the middle of nowhere." The team descended one by one. The walls were lined with insulation and old carpet, barely stapled in. The deeper they went, the heavier the smell became. Mildew, urine, blood. Then they heard it, a tiny whimper. Not lightning. Something human. The sheriff raised her fist to stop the team. "Light down, voices off." She moved forward alone. In the back corner of the room sat a little girl, no older than 6. She was curled into a sleeping bag that had once been pink. Her face was pale. Her arms clutched something to her chest. It was the broken toy pony, the same one from the backpack. Her lips moved silently. Her eyes were wide but not crying. Just hollow. Lightning didn't bark. He didn't charge. He walked gently toward her, lay down on the floor and placed his head near her knee. The girl reached out and touched his ear. The sheriff dropped to one knee. "Sweetheart, are you Elena?" The girl blinked, then nodded slowly. They carried her out wrapped in Wade's flannel shirt. As the moon rose, the other officers searched the trailer. They found photos, ropes, journals filled with disturbing ramblings, names, dates, and keys to more than one lock. Back at the Pine Hill Sheriff's Station, Elena was treated by medics. Lightning never left her side. even as they checked her vitals, and bandaged her scratches. He lay by her feet, his chest rising and falling in sync with hers. Wade stood outside, arms crossed. He hadn't smoked in 15 years, but looked like he needed one. The sheriff joined him. "We're gonna need statements, but first I need to know. How did you know it was him?" Wade's voice was quiet. "You never forget your partner, especially one that saved your life." He looked through the window at Lightning. "Last time I saw him, we were crossing a ravine after a flood warning. He picked up a scent, broke formation. I yelled for him to stop, but he ran toward this burned-out bus. Then the ground gave out." He paused. "I thought I lost him." The sheriff nodded. "You didn't." "He must have been looking for her the whole time," Wade added. 4 years. No badge, no partner, just instinct." Later that night, Elena spoke to a child psychologist. Her first full sentence was, "The dog brought me home." Her second was, "He was barking every night, but the man hit him when he did." The FBI was called in by dawn. By the time the news van showed up, the story was already viral. Former military canine returns from presumed death to rescue kidnapped girl in rural Arizona. But there were details the public never heard, like how Lightning refused to eat until Elena ate first, or how he paced the hallway when she had nightmares, whining softly until someone turned on a light. Or how Wade, who once thought his service days were behind him, called the sheriff and said, "I think he's trying to tell us there are more." And deep down, they all believed he was right. 3 days after Elena was rescued, the sheriff's office in Pine Hill transformed from a sleepy outpost into a makeshift command center. Folding tables were set up in every hallway. Maps were pinned with colored tacks. Agents in suits came and went, their radios chirping constantly. Reporters camped outside the building trying to get quotes, photos, anything. Inside, Wade Harlan stood by the break room coffee pot, hands wrapped around a chipped mug he hadn't taken a sip from. Lightning sat at his feet, tail thumping once in a while, his eyes scanning the hallway like he was still on patrol. A knock on the frame caught Wade's attention. It was Sheriff Landry. "We ran those journals through a database," she said. 3 of the names matched active missing persons cases, 1 from Phoenix, 2 from New Mexico. Wade didn't answer. He just scratched Lightning behind the ear. Landry added, "And we found something else. A small red flag next to each. Name, dates, they're spread out. Almost ritualistic." "You think he's still holding others?" Wade asked quietly. "I think Elena's just the beginning." Later that afternoon, Lightning paced restlessly in the hallway outside the interview room. Inside, a child psychologist was talking gently with Elena. The girl sat curled in a beanbag chair, her small hands gripping the frayed ear of her toy pony. From behind the one-way glass, Wade and the sheriff watched. "She's smart," Landry said. "Doesn't remember much clearly, but she remembers sounds." "Sounds?" Wade asked. She described wind, a train horn, a low buzzing noise at night, and something she called the crying wall. Wade squinted. "What the hell's a crying wall?" She said it made noises like people were crying, but far away. Sometimes it screamed. Wade's gut tightened. "That ain't imagination." "No," Landry replied. "That's trauma." At that moment, Lightning's ears perked. He stood and walked down the hall to the back door, sniffing the air. Then he looked back at Wade and whined. Wade stood up slowly. "He wants to go again." They drove out at dusk, Wade in his pickup, Lightning riding shotgun. Behind them, 2 unmarked SUVs with agents followed at a distance. No sirens, just shadows. Lightning guided them east along State Route 79. For over an hour, the dog stared out the window, only breaking eye contact when he barked once and shoved his nose to the dashboard. "Got something, boy?" Wade asked, slowing down. Lightning barked again. Wade turned down a gravel service road. It was narrow, choked with brush. Eventually, it opened into a clearing near a set of rusted train tracks. The place was dead quiet. The only sound was the wind rustling mesquite trees and the occasional clank of metal from the tracks cooling after a hot day. Lightning jumped out before Wade could grab the leash. He ran toward a chain-link fence that surrounded an old, boarded-up warehouse. The agents climbed out, weapons drawn. "No lights," one of them ordered. Lightning sniffed along the fence line, then he stopped. He pressed his body low to the ground and began digging. Wade ran over with a flashlight, keeping it low. The dirt gave way quickly. There was something buried. A panel. Wooden. Nailed down. Covered in dry brush and sand. Back up," Wade muttered. "Now." They pried it open. The space below wasn't deep, but it was dark and narrow. And it wasn't empty. There were mattresses, blankets, empty water bottles, and zip ties. No children. But someone had been there. Recently. Then lightning started barking. Loud, furious, focused. He darted around to the back of the building, then disappeared into the shadows. "Lightning!" Wade shouted, grabbing a flashlight and following. He found the dog standing at the back entrance to the warehouse, growling at the door. Wade tried the knob. Locked. A moment later, the agents arrived and forced it open. The smell hit them first. Rotting food, mold, urine, sweat. They moved in slowly, weapons ready. Inside, the warehouse was mostly empty except for a corner section that had been walled off with plywood and soundproof foam. Lightning ran straight to it. They broke it open. Inside were 3 more children, 2 boys. 1 girl, all thin, all scared, all huddled under a single dirty blanket. The older boy tried to shield the others. Then he saw lightning. "You came back," he whispered. Wade swallowed hard. "He found you?" The boy nodded. "He was barking from outside last week, then he stopped. We thought he gave up." Wade knelt beside them. "He never gives up," he said. "He just had to get help." It took hours to secure the scene. More agents arrived, more evidence collected. Someone called in a therapist team from Tucson. By midnight, the children were safely transported to a local hospital. The sheriff's department set up a hotline for other potential victims. News crews circled like vultures. Reporters called Lightning a national hero. But Lightning didn't care. He sat by the ambulance door watching the children until they were out of sight. Back at the station, Sheriff Landry met Wade outside. "You were right," she said. "There were more." Wade didn't say anything. Landry added, "FBI wants him. They want Lightning at Quantico, behavioral analysis, case studies, TV appearances." Wade chuckled bitterly. "He's not a celebrity," he said. "He's a soldier. He's a rescuer. Let him be." She nodded. "What do you want to do?" Wade looked at the dog sleeping in the back of his truck. "I want to take him home," he said. Landry smiled. "Then do it. He's earned it." That night, in Wade's cabin outside of town, Lightning curled up at the foot of the couch. Wade sat with a cup of coffee gone cold, staring out the window into the dark Arizona hills. He thought about the train horn Elena had described, about the crying wall, about the way Lightning had barked at the trailer 3 days earlier. Wade leaned forward and said softly to the dog, "You still got something to show me, don't you?" Lightning opened one eye, then closed it again. They both knew the job wasn't finished. Not yet. The following morning, Wade and Lightning were back on the porch of the cabin, sipping coffee and chasing flies respectively. The Arizona sun hadn't yet reached its full blaze, but the heat was already clinging to the air like a warning. Lightning sat alert, ears twitching with every distant sound, though he appeared calm. Wade wasn't. Something was gnawing at the edge of his thoughts, like a hangnail he couldn't ignore. He pulled out the case folder that Sheriff Landry had dropped off late the night before. Inside were photos, hand-drawn maps from the kids, and FBI reports from the warehouse raid. Each child had described hearing something beyond the foam walls, a voice, heavy footsteps, a cough, and the same name kept coming up, Mr. Dale. Wade closed the folder and muttered to the dog, "That name mean anything to you, partner?" Lightning gave a low growl. Wade didn't need a translation. By noon, he was back at the sheriff's station. Landry was hunched over a desk, phone wedged between her shoulder and chin, scribbling notes. Wade waited until she hung up, then tossed the folder on her desk. "Who's Dale?" She looked up, tired but focused. "That's what the kid said. Mr. Dale brought them food." sometimes yelled. One said he had a limp. Wade folded his arms. There's no Dale in the system. I checked all the arrest records tied to the trailer, the warehouse, the vehicles. Landry nodded. That's because Dale isn't a full name, it's a middle name. She slid a sheet of paper across the desk. Martin Dale Grissom, former social worker, lost his license after complaints were filed about inappropriate behavior. Moved states twice. Now registered in Arizona as a long-haul trucker. Wade leaned in. That's the guy? Better than even odds, she said. And here's the kicker. His rig was spotted near the Pine Hill Supercenter the same day Lightning showed up. Wade felt his stomach drop. He's watching the stores? Maybe. Even scouting victims, Landry said. And if Lightning caught his scent, he might have been nearby when we found Elena. Wade clenched his fists. Landry added, We've put out a bolo, but Grissom hasn't checked in at any way station since Friday. Could be off-grid. Or he knows we're on to him. That night, Wade couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire pit in his backyard, Lightning curled up nearby. The stars were out in full, unobscured by city light, and the wind carried the smell of dry mesquite and distant train smoke. Around 2 a.m, Wade's old flip phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A voice on the other end was low, scratchy and unfamiliar. You think you're a hero, cowboy? Wade's heart froze. Who is this? You got lucky finding that warehouse, but you didn't find all of them. Wade stood slowly, his voice ice cold. Grissom. The voice chuckled. They always talk. Kids are weak. They want to be found. Wade stepped away from the cabin, glancing at Lightning, who was now on his feet, ears straight. What do you want? Wade asked. I want my dog back. The line went dead. Wade stared at the phone, then at Lightning. The dog stared back, teeth slightly bared. They're still out there, Wade said. Lightning growled again. Within the hour, Wade was back in town. The sheriff had called in federal support. Agents were analyzing Grissom's last known GPS signals. One ping had been faint but recent. A desert junkyard just off Route 287, the kind of place no one ever looked at twice. Wade and Lightning rode with Harper in the unmarked SUV. The heat was rising. By the time they reached the lot, the mirage shimmered across the ground. The junkyard was quiet. Rows of rusted vehicles, stretched in every direction. Broken glass sparkled under the sun. Lightning was already out of the car before the engine turned off. He sniffed the wind, then started trotting, tail stiff. Harper followed with her weapon drawn. The dog turned sharply between 2 rows of old RVs. He stopped in front of a dark blue semi-truck with a silver stripe. The trailer was detached. The cab door hung slightly ajar. Lightning growled. Harper motioned to Wade, who reached up slowly and opened the door fully. The cab was empty, but there was something on the floorboard. A child's sock, stained, still warm. Call it in, Harper said. We're close. They swept the yard. Lightning led them to a storage container hidden behind a stack of crushed cars. It was padlocked, but Wade didn't wait. He used a tire iron. Inside, it was dark. No windows, barely any air. A girl no older than 10 sat in the corner. Her wrists were zip-tied, her eyes shut tight. Lightning walked up slowly and whined. She opened her eyes and smiled. You came back, she whispered. Wade dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. Harper called it in. The child was safe. But the man was gone. Grissom had vanished. Later, that evening back at the cabin, Lightning wouldn't eat. He stood at the screen door staring out into the trees, waiting. Wade knelt beside him. You're not done, are you? Lightning didn't move. Wade stood up and said the words he hadn't spoken since combat days. Then we finish it. Lightning didn't sleep that night. Neither did Wade. While the rest of Pine Hill settled into their homes, locking doors and turning off porch lights, Wade sat at his kitchen table with an old road map spread out beneath a flickering lamp. Lightning paced in circles near the door. occasionally stopping to glance at the truck keys hanging on the wall. Wade tapped his pencil against the table. Grissom was a trucker, a creature of habit. And truckers didn't just vanish, they left traces in diesel and dirt. He picked up the phone and called a friend from his old service days, now working dispatch with the Arizona Department of Transportation. "Need a favor, Paul," Wade said. "I figured," Paul replied. "Been seeing your name all over the news." Wade didn't smile. "Grissom drives a blue Freightliner Silver Stripe. You got anything matching that heading out of Pinal County in the last 12 hours? There was silence on the line. Then, keys clacking. "Yeah," Paul said. "Got a match heading north on 89. Last seen near the Mogollon Rim." Wade's heart kicked. "Can you send me the nearest exit route and anything odd about his timing?" "Already on its way," Paul said. "You sure about this, Harlan?" "I'm not letting him vanish again." By dawn, Wade and Lightning were back in the truck, heading north on I-17. The desert slowly gave way to high pines and red cliffs. As the sun climbed behind them, Lightning stayed silent, his gaze locked forward, muscles tight. He knew. He always knew. At a fuel stop near Winslow, Wade checked in with Sheriff Landry. "We think he's heading toward reservation land," she told him. "There's places up there that haven't seen a patrol in years." "Exactly why he'd go there," Wade said. "You're not going in alone." "I'm not. I've got Lightning." Landry sighed. "Be careful. I mean it." The road got rougher past Flagstaff. Cell signal dropped. Trees thickened. Wade saw tire tracks veering off a service road just past a rusted sign that read, "Restricted, U.S. Forestry." He stopped the truck. Lightning jumped out before the engine cut off. The tracks led to a clearing surrounded by tall pines with an abandoned ranger cabin in the middle. The truck was there, parked, door open, empty. Wade raised his binoculars, scanning the area. Nothing moved. The air was thick with pine sap and tension. Lightning sniffed, then took off toward the tree line. Wade followed, shotgun slung, heart pounding. They moved silently through the underbrush for nearly a quarter mile before Lightning stopped and pointed. There was a shack, small, homemade, built into the hillside, a makeshift bunker, and someone was inside. Wade crouched behind a tree, breathing slowly. Grissom was pacing. Through a broken panel of the shack's wall, Wade could see a man in a stained flannel shirt limping back and forth. His voice echoed in low murmurs. Then Wade heard it. Crying. From underground. There were more kids. Lightning whined softly but didn't move. Trained. Wade pulled out his phone. No signal. It had to be now. He motioned to Lightning. The dog crept, left through the brush, drawing Grissom's attention. The man heard the rustle, stepped out with a pistol drawn. "Who's out there?" Wade used that moment. He broke cover, leveled his shotgun, and shouted, "Drop it!" Grissom spun but didn't. "Shoot!" Lightning tackled him before the gun could raise. The two hit the ground hard. Wade rushed in, kicked the weapon away, and cuffed the man with his old service restraints. Grissom cursed, blood at his lip. "You're too late," he hissed. "They'll never talk." Wade ignored him. "Where's the hatch?" Grissom grinned. Lightning growled, stepping on his chest. Wade searched the shack. Under a rug, beneath a loose board, was the door, locked from outside. He broke it open. A ladder led down to a crude pit. Inside, two children, barely older than toddlers, looked up, blinking in the dim light. They didn't scream. They reached. Wade carried them both out, wrapped them in his jacket. Lightning walked beside them, tail tucked but calm. One of the kids looked up and whispered, "Are you the, cowboy from the stories?" Wade nodded once. "Yeah. And that's Lightning. He's the one who found you." The boy touched Lightning's ear. "Good dog." Backup arrived an hour later. Grissom was hauled away in shackles. The kids were flown by chopper to a trauma unit. In Phoenix, Wade stood with Lightning as the blades spun overhead. Sheriff Landry called just before sunset. "You did it." Wade looked down at his partner. "No," he said. "He did." That night the cabin was quiet. Wade sat on the porch, sipping cold coffee again. Lightning lay in the dirt, finally resting. The stars came out, and for the first time in weeks, no one cried, no one ran, no one barked in desperation, just the breeze through the trees, just peace. But Wade knew something else. The story wasn't over, because for every Grissom, there was another. And Lightning would never stop listening for the next cry in the dark. It had been 3 weeks since the final rescue in the forest shack. Pine Hill had returned to its usual rhythms, coffee brewed by 6 a.m., kids on bikes racing down cracked sidewalks, the grocery store once again filled with bored husbands pushing carts behind shopping lists they didn't write. But something in the town had changed. People nodded more, looked each other in the eyes a little longer. Mothers held their children tighter. And above it all, the story of a dog with dirty fur and eyes full of fire had become something of a local legend. Lightning had become more than a name. He had become a symbol. The sheriff's department hosted a community thank you gathering in the town square that Saturday. Tents lined the grass filled with lemonade, folding chairs, and news cameras. Kids wore homemade paper police hats. Parents clapped along to the high school band. In the center of it all, a small platform had been built. Wade didn't want to go up there. He never liked attention. He didn't serve for applause. But Lightning sat by his side, calm as ever, chest out and eyes scanning the crowd like he was still on duty. Sheriff Landry took the microphone and addressed the crowd. There are a lot of heroes in this town. First responders, nurses, teachers, truck drivers who stay awake through storms. But today, we honor a different kind of hero. The kind who walks on 4 legs, listens without speaking, and never forgets a scent. She nodded toward Wade and Lightning. This is the dog that didn't stop when the job was done. He stopped when the children were safe. The applause started slow, then built into something deafening. Wade bent down and whispered to Lightning. "You hear that? That's for you, boy." Lightning let out a small bark, like a thank you in his own language. Later that evening, the news crews left. The lights dimmed. Most people were home watching the story play on their televisions. Wade and Lightning drove back to the cabin. The truck was quiet, not from silence but from peace. At home, Wade poured himself a glass of sweet tea and settled onto the porch swing. Lightning lay beside him with his head resting on Wade's boot. A breeze rolled in. The stars blinked awake. Wade looked down and said softly, "You did good, partner." Lightning didn't move, just wagged his tail once. "You think we're done?" Wade asked. Lightning lifted his head and stared toward the tree line. Then he stood. No growl, no bark, just awareness. Wade followed his gaze, and there, stepping through the shadows at the edge of the woods, was a boy, maybe 11, barefoot, pale, clothes torn. Wade stood up slowly. The boy didn't speak. He just raised his hand and pointed behind him. Another child stepped forward, and another, 3 kids, all of them blinking like they hadn't seen a porch light in years. Wade didn't need to ask. Lightning already knew. He ran toward them, tail wagging hard now, sniffing, circling, making sure they were okay. Wade called it in, got the sheriff out, the medics rolling again. By morning, 3 more lives were out of the dark. 2 weeks later, Wade received a letter, handwritten. Careful, it was from Elena. "Dear Mr. Harlan and Lightning, my name is Elena, but I think you remember that. I just wanted to say thank you. My mom says it's okay to sleep now. Lightning is my hero. You too. I drew a picture. I hope you like it. Love, Elena." Inside was a crayon drawing of Lightning with a badge around his neck and 3 kids holding his tail like it was a parade banner. Wade framed it and placed it above the fireplace. Life began to move forward again. Lightning, now somewhat of a celebrity, turned down multiple offers from television shows and training academies. Wade didn't answer the phone when they called. He only answered Lightning, and Lightning had one rule. If a child cries, we go. If the past knocks, we open the door. If no one else listens, we do. On one particularly quiet evening, Wade sat on the porch, looking out at the horizon. He spoke to the dog next to him, his voice low. "You know, I used to think justice came in uniforms and gavels, but maybe sometimes it comes in fur and grit and teeth." Lightning looked up, then rested his head again. Wade sipped his tea. "We didn't save the whole world," he said, "but we saved theirs." He paused, then looked directly at the stars. "And sometimes that's enough." Life lesson. Heroes don't always wear capes or badges. Sometimes they crawl through the dust, follow the trail everyone else missed, and bark when no one else is listening. Lightning wasn't just a dog. He was a reminder that listening matters, that courage isn't loud, and that loyalty can span miles, years, and heartbreaks. Now it's your turn. Have you ever seen an animal do something that changed the course of a life? Maybe even your own? What would you do if the only one barking the truth was a dog?